Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode. We are at episode 30. Holy spicoli. Time flies in a crappy COVID year. But I can't mask, see what I did there? My enthusiasm as we drive to 15,000 episode downloads by Christmas. What a gift that'll be under my tree. So thank you, Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, our top 3 listening cities. And thank you to Nuremberg, Bavaria, Jason Voorhees, New Jersey, and Hamburg. Is that redundant? Even though those last 3 only have 1 episode downloaded. As always, check the show notes for where to watch our documentary, which, by the way, will be playing at the Wicked Virtual Film Fest, a 13-hour online paranormal buffet on October 30th and 31st. What a great lineup. Go to paranormalrewind.com, that's paranormalrewind.com, to learn more and buy a ticket. Not to name drop, but Brandon Alvis from Ghost Hunters, who will also be on our show soon, has a film at Wicked Virtual Film Fest as well. Check it out. But first, check out episode 30, featuring mind reader Mark Toland. Thank you, Free SFX at freesfx.co.uk for the sound effects.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Mark Toland is an international award-winning mind reader. His entertainment is the go-to choice for major corporate and college events around the world. Mark has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, WGN, NPR, SiriusXM, and WBEZ. In 2019, Mark was the artist in residence at the Chicago Magic Lounge and Liberty Magic, Pittsburgh, with his hit show Mind Reader. ABC called Mark the best we've ever seen, and Broadway World called it a standout performance of mind over matter. In 2018, Mark's critically acclaimed one-man show Mind Reader won the prestigious Chicago Theater Award for Best Special Event. In the same year, Mark's international Out of My Mind tour garnered praise across North America. The show won Best of Fest, Kansas City, a top 10 pick, Kansas City, and Outstanding Mentalism Performance, San Diego. View Weekly says, Mark Toland is sincerely funny, heartfelt, and keeps you in awe, and awarded the show 5 stars at the Edmonton International Fringe Festival. In 2017, Mark went on an international tour, performing sold-out shows around North America. The Mystery Tour earned praise and awards from New York City to San Diego. Mark has also correctly guessed the outcome of the NCAA men's basketball tournament, predicted the headlines of the Chicago Tribune, and bicycled through Chicago traffic completely blindfolded. Mark is also a 2-time TEDx speaker and was a featured performer at Disney World. Today, he performs hundreds of shows each year for exclusive events worldwide. All right, I'm here with Mark Toland, a mind reader, mentalist, and I think magician, too, we could throw in there, as well as entertainer. So, Mark, we're going to have a mano-a-mano, or should I say mindo-a-mindo conversation tonight. Welcome to the show.
It sounds great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I found out about you through my boss, who is thinking of attending one of your virtual events. So I found out about you, checked your background, and was really intrigued. So happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks.
Some of the basic questions, just to start it with, is what's the difference between being a mentalist and a mind reader? Or are they both one and the same?
Well, it's a good question. So I think the world of magic is like, if you think of it as all one encompassing kind of circus tent, and then within that would be mentalist, which would be like a little section, like a ring of the circus or whatever you want to say, right? One little section over here. And then mind reader is within mentalist, right? So it's a little subset of magic, which I'm fine to be called a magician. My business card says mind reader, but it's, it's all the same. I'm working in the mystery art. So a mind reader that I go by as my moniker specifically is just reading minds, theatrical mind reading under the guise of entertainment. So I am creating the appearance. I can read minds, comedy clubs, theaters, you name it. A mentalist perhaps expands on that, on their on-stage skill set. So they might, I don't know, Uri Geller's a good example, bend silverware, or maybe they do a little hypnosis or something, right? So it opens up their mind powers a little more, maybe some pyrokinesis or telekinesis or something like that, right? So just a few other things. For me, I just chose a very specific thing. I think it was a branding decision more than anything. It's very easy to say mind reader and you skip way ahead. I found that saying mentalist, people are like, what's a mentalist? And that's one extra question that, I didn't need to answer a million times. So if nothing, it was a branding decision. And then it just kind of solidified into on-stage specificity with one of my shows.
A long time ago, I saw in Boston, I'm in Massachusetts, a David Copperfield show. He did something which is crazy. I mean, he did stuff where it was like illusionist. Like, I forget, he had like an animal, like a dog, and you almost saw like a chicken head on there. He did all this weird stuff that we thought we saw, but we knew we couldn't see,
right.
So is that part of mentalist too, or is that just a whole nother angle of being a magician?
Well, so I always like to think of mentalism or mind reading as magic with thoughts. So if magic is if magic is like performing with like tricks with props, I'm doing tricks with thoughts, right? My props are the thoughts of the audience. So there are moments in my show where people believe they see something that they didn't, where I get other people to read someone else's mind, where I get people to read my mind. Maybe the whole audience picks up on things I'm trying to send them. So that is very much kind of connected to what you just said, although it's happening more in the mind instead of maybe something they're seeing. But there's definitely a crossover there in that kind of arena, maybe. I'm not really sure how to refer to that, but in that kind of idea, it's something I'm fascinated with because I love optical illusions. I love like mystery books and movies and things like that. So I do like playing with the thing of like seeing things that aren't there, experiencing things that are not real, leaving questions that, they may never have kind of a satisfactory answer for. So all those things interest me, and I think are an important component of a show. Otherwise, it's just, look, I read your mind. And it's me showing off for an hour. And no one wants to see me show off for an hour. So better to share something with people that's a little more unique than that.
Yeah. On your bio, the rave reviews, you have quite a run going on. I'm sure you're asked this all the time, but, if it's new to our audience, how did you get started in this? And the second part of that is, when do you know that you were good and that you wanted to make it a career and go full time?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I am Claudio Mergen, the host of the Spiritually Inspired podcast. 129 episodes later, I can say that the word about the podcast is spreading fast. The audio versions are available on Apple, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the other major audio platforms. Please check us out at www.spirituallyinspired.ca. Thank you.
Oh, I'm still working on the good part. I have such a, what's that complex? I have such a fraud complex, whatever that term is. I'm just forever wondering, am I good at this? I'm questioning that and all that. But I guess that's any artist's journey, perhaps, and trying to figure it out. I'm gonna be 34 this year, so I started about 30 years ago now. I think I was about 4 years old. It was right before I was going into kindergarten, and a bunch of things happened in a row. So actually, I saw David Copperfield on TV. You just mentioned that. I saw a magician at our county fair just doing some simple tricks, but it was the first time I'd seen someone do that live. And then I think my parents were getting ready to have another baby, or my brother right under me was very young and they were taking care of him. And so they willingly bought me this tome on magic, this very thick hardcover book that came with some very colorful plastic props, and I think if more than anything, they just hoped maybe it would give them a little escape from me because I was a handful. And it did. I got, all those things happen concurrently, and I just got bit by the bug. So I more than any other hobby in my life, stuck with that all the way through everything. I always was annoyingly carrying a deck of cards or something and doing tricks for people. And then you kind of grow out of that and you realize like, I'm not really a show off. And I always thought I was like an extrovert, but I realized the more I performed that I just had an extrovert like quota to fill. And if I did enough shows, then I was really introverted. But this is a realization I've had in recent years. Turns out I'm an introvert. I just needed to get out all that like Jim Carrey-esque energy on stage so that I could just kind of relax into who I really am, which is nice. It's nice to go out and be something else and do something to, selflessly to share and connect with people and make them happy and share mystery and all those good things. I would say it wasn't until I was going through school, through university and starting to do some gigs on the side and starting to understand that I could charge money for this because companies need entertainment, private parties need entertainment, and they're willing to pay you well if you do good entertainment. So I really started working on the show and I was kind of moonlighting in college, and I was thinking, man, do I want to be an actor? I was in theater school, or do I want to do this? I remember going to an audition and seeing up and down the hallway a bunch of approximately 6-foot white guys with brown hair and blue eyes, just like me, and thinking, I'm never going to stand out like this. This is just not for me. And I realized I had this skill on the side that was kind of my thing that could stand out. And so I bit the bullet and came out of school with no other plan except to do this, no other skills really. And it took several years to get both feet on the ground and feel like I'd made progress. But that was kind of the journey I took, was out of school, was just knock on doors and do, I was doing gigs everywhere, backyards for people, poolside, sides of mountains in LA. I was sleeping on couches. I did gigs in barbershops and dive bars, you name it, all these things, and eventually worked further and further along to get to do the shows I'm doing now, which are nice theaters and corporate events and college dates. And although mostly on Zoom, we're recording this in 2020, so we should say mostly on Zoom these days.
Yeah. It's funny, sidetrack to that. The first film I made, which is a drama, one of the actors is a guy named Gene Silver. That's kind of his stage name, I guess.
Okay.
And he is a magician. He is an actor and a magician. And he is actually part of the Magic Castle in,
Great.
LA or something? Yeah.
Right.
So he has, it's kind of, and he's kind of the same way. He's not really this super salesman type extrovert personality, but it helped him. And he's very kind of coordinated, which I guess you are with your hands, and very dexterous and things. And he just allowed him to kind of do that. And he actually, with the Magic Act, he is kind of the Magic Act for Hollywood celebrity kids. It's like a bunch of almost like Drew Carey. Yeah, like Drew Carey, Robert De Niro. It's a bunch of them that they hire him and he does shows for their kids for birthday parties. And he's also done some other stuff. So I just, little sidetrack there, but it's interesting you mentioned that. It kind of reminded me of it.
Oh, that's great. I went to theater school out at USC, at least for part of when I was in college. And I was a junior member of the Magic Castle. It's like a rite of passage. I'd read about it forever. I'm from the Midwest. Once I got out there, I was like, I got to audition for this. So when auditions open up, I went in, auditioned and got in, and spending time there, it's like you're walking the halls where all these people have walked. And obviously, if you perform there, you never know who's going to be in the audience because it's right there in the heart of Hollywood, right behind the Chinese theater. So,
yep.
It's a crazy cool place. And I think that's very funny because that guy you mentioned and other people, or even me, there's so many of us performing out there who aren't David Copperfield, but make a fine living and are doing all this thing behind the scenes. People may never hear of them, but they're entertaining celebrities' kids, or in my case, I do like a lot of stuff for Fortune 500. So I always like to think it's like an undercurrent of the entertainment world that people aren't even aware exists, but there's all these guys who make a great career performing and entertaining, and they may never be on Jimmy Fallon or have the Netflix show or something, but they're fantastic. Some of the most amazing people you'd ever see. And many of them are at the Magic Castle like that. So.
Yeah, it was great. After we did the film, I had him, I think 2 years. He came down for our holiday Christmas party and did magic, before this pandemic hit. So yeah, it was great. Now, you mentioned you attended USC, and then I think you transferred to Wichita State afterwards. But
that's right.
There's this story about you when you did some sort of card trick there, and there's still a relic of it hanging up on, I think, a ceiling in the USC bookstore. You want to tell us about that?
Oh man, I don't know where you dug that up, but that's good. I used to do. There's a classic effect with cards, a classic trick with cards, card on ceiling, popularized by, I think maybe by a guy here in Chicago years and years ago, if I'm thinking right. I would know my history on this more, but I don't do really magic or card tricks anymore. But back when I was at USC, I was kind of doing a lot of crossword stuff. I was doing some mind reading, I'm doing some magic. The crazy thing about this trick is essentially someone picks a card, signs a card, they lose it in the deck, shuffle it up, and then you rubber band the deck up and you throw it up high and the deck comes down, but one card remains up above your head, stuck to the ceiling, facing down, and it's their signed card. So if anyone ever goes to a magic shop or even like a magic theater and looks up on the ceiling, you're destined to see just like hundreds of cards, right? Because it's such a popular thing. But at USC, there was an overhang at the school bookstore where I used to work. And I remember we were sitting out with some of my hallmates, some friends of mine, and they were like, show us something, just conversation always kind of works that way when you do magic as I do. And I guess for, if my memory serves me right, I did this trick outside and that overhang is probably 40 feet up in the air or something. And I just heaved these cards up in the air, and they landed. And if you squinted, you could see that 4 of clubs or whatever it was with a big signature across it. And it's been up there ever since. So like you said, I sadly had a death in the family, had to transfer out of USC partway through. But I still get texts from my friends to this day who are back for an alumni event or passing through. They're there doing a workshop or something. They walk past the bookstore and they're like, dude, it's still there. And it's been faded by the sun. It's warped, but it's still stuck to the ceiling. It's probably just like a white piece of paper now, but it's stuck up there on that overhang at the USC bookstore. And it's in such a location, it'd be impossible to get it down without one of those genie lifts or something like that, So that's the story of that crazy card trick that's persisted all these years.
That's awesome. Have you ever had like a bad night or a bad streak? And when that does happen, how do you rebound? Do you just trust your process or how do you kind of come back from that?
Sure. I don't know who said it, but it's something along the lines of like, good shows are the goal, but bad shows are how you get there. Right. So you're going to have bad shows. And in the beginning, when you haven't done hundreds of shows, bad shows are awful. It's like cry yourself to sleep or drive 3 hours back to your hotel or the airport the next morning or whatever you're doing, because in the beginning I'm doing work wherever I can 7-8 years ago. So I would fly somewhere or drive somewhere very far away. And the amount of work put in to get to the show was not equal to what I was getting paid or the audience's reaction and feedback back to me. They were pretty much non-existent. I'm putting in all these hours. They have no idea to get there. And then they just kind of are very cold and standoffish. And you have to learn to balance that out. So all those feelings early on without hundreds of shows are just so detrimental to your mental health and your anxiety. But if you can do hundreds of shows and work through and start to have good shows, at least in my experience, I've grown to enjoy the energy of a bad show, or we could say like a bomb, to use like comedy terms. Like if I bomb and I know I'm bombing in the moment, then I almost just double down on the energy and just think like, okay, we're here now. And if you can just embrace that feeling and stay in it, you're almost invincible, right? Because you've conquered it and you're not letting it get to you. And you just know, hey, it's going to be fine. This show's going to be over. And I got another one tomorrow and I'll just get it back tomorrow. And that I had that maybe a couple of years ago, that kind of mental breakthrough in the moment when I was bombing at a show and it just wasn't clicking. It was a bad venue. Everything was stacked against me and I just wasn't having a good outing. But I didn't let it affect me. And it kind of turned the other way. I started kind of just like ad-libbing jokes about myself in the moment and how bad it was. And people started to get on my side. And I didn't really win them back or like, turn it around. That wasn't like a hero story. But I did sense in myself like, hey, this isn't going to bother me or ruin my drive back to the hotel or 2 days from now or something, because it's going to happen. And once you know that, you've kind of reached like the next plateau, so to speak, of your art or your craft, I guess, as an entertainer. And, perhaps in other fields, but I only have that reference point. But yeah, that's helped me. And then obviously, the goal, I'll have good runs too, long runs. You just want to string together more good shows than bad after a while. Otherwise, maybe find another line of work. But yeah, I think that's it more than anything. I just learned to kind of embrace that energy, learn something from it. And hopefully, in the beginning, I'd have shows like 3 weeks apart. You're sitting around for 3 weeks to get another shot at it. Now my show's 24 hours later. So, you wipe it away with a good show the next night. That's maybe the most important. So it's just holding on and hoping you can get more shows and more experience.
So you're from Chicago, so I'll throw a sports analogy out. It's like the reliever that kind of blows the game by giving up a bomb, a home run or something, or even a field goal kicker that goes wide right or something, and they come back for their next kick. It's just kind of a nice lesson in there. You just got to put it aside and come back.
Definitely.
Question for you, what type of person is a tough read? When you look at an audience, are we all the same herd, or are there some people that to stay away from, just like on a jury?
Well, I don't know if anyone's a tough read because I am, a psychological illusionist. So I'm just creating the illusion of reading minds. I think of it as like tricky psychology and psychological trickery, right? So it's that kind of Venn diagram in the middle. So it's not that, but I think more than anything, I'm looking for people during a live show who will be good on stage, right? So oftentimes it's like they're dressed a little nicer. They actually got dressed up to come to the theater. They're not in jeans and flip flops. I can tell they're kind of taking this seriously, right? And also it's going to look good in photos, particularly for like my corporate clients if they're on stage with me. So that's a good one. They're making eye contact and smiling. That's a good one. They're leaning forward. They're not on their phone. That's a good one. All these things are really helpful. And it tells me that they're going to just be great volunteers. I used to make bets with my wife back in the day when she would come with me to almost every show. And now she's got her own separate thing and doesn't quite as often. But back then she would come and we would peek through the curtains and I would make a bet with her, like that person right there is going to be like the best reaction, the best volunteer. And I kid you not, like 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, I was always right because I had just done enough shows that I could just see a person come in and be like, they're going to explode on stage. They're going to not be too nervous or not, not insecure. They're going to just be able to come on stage and have fun and understand that I'm not trying to bully them or put one past them or embarrass them. They are part of the show. In fact, they are the show at that point. And so, yeah, that is maybe the actual reading I'm doing is sizing someone up very quickly and saying, okay, there's a table of 4 over here. And that second from the left is the best one. Come on stage.
You look at physical cues, or do you get like any energy, or do you get any intuitiveness in that? Or they're just the way that they act. You can look at them and say, okay, I can tell by the way they're reacting that they're receptive, they're open, they're going to be excited, that sort of thing.
I think it's like, when you're like, maybe you're in the room with your partner or something, or and you can just tell they're upset about something, right? You could have your back to them and you can sense it, right? It's not psychic. It's not really like an aura thing, but you've been around that person long enough to know. And I think it's the same as like, you're sitting with a friend at lunch and you can tell they're about to get up and go to the bathroom. They're about to get up and take a call. They're going to get up and go order some more food or whatever it is. Right. So I think those things, those little subtle cues we pick up on with people that we know a lot or in situations that we frequent often are the same here, except I've just done hundreds of shows. So I'm able to pick up on these things from strangers because I forget who said this, but someone said our most, what is the quote? Our most predictable trait as humans is how unpredictable we think we are. So I think that's the same thing. Like the audiences that I perform for corporate or college, although they're vastly different, when I'm at those particular gigs, they seem to fall into patterns. The college kids fall into patterns. The corporate people fall into patterns. I know who's going to make a good volunteer from doing hundreds of shows and also just kind of observing them casually, like you would with a partner in that situation or a friend or something like that. But yeah, it's just, I mean, the advice that, and it's the advice no one wants to hear. But anytime I have younger performers who are, coming out of school like I was back then, and they ask me like, I want to do this, what do I do? And I give them that advice for anything, which is do hundreds of shows, do as many shows as you can, get in front of as many people as possible, because that's where all the breakthroughs happen is, it's just experience. It's just that hours of stage time where you realize like, hey, I've made hundreds of mistakes up here and I'm fine. I recovered. I've had every potential outcome with a volunteer on stage and I understand what's going to happen now. That's made all the difference for me and taken years. And like I said, I'm still working on that good part. I'm still working on more experience and more shows, but I've been fortunate the past 4 or 5 years really to have a very, very busy schedule and see the growth month to month in a way I couldn't years ago when my schedule was so kind of scattered.
So is it fair to say when you do a show, The only thing that is random probably is the person that you pick, but you pretty much can control the outcome. So no matter who you pick, you're maybe you're not reading their mind per se, but you can, off of cues or whatever, you can control what the answer is, and you have confidence in that. Because originally I was going to say, like, is there a person that's a tough read? Have you ever read a person's mind and you've gotten uncomfortable information? So it sounds like going into it, you'll pull people up on stage, but you kind of know the outcome before they come up on stage. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Kind of. I would say, like the show is loosely scripted, right? A show like this is not perfectly scripted because audience members are interacting. So there's not officially like a fourth wall between me and the audience who's watching. So because of that interaction, it leads to new dialogue I'm not familiar with. It leads to audience members behaving in ways that I couldn't anticipate because people do have individual personalities. However, I am guiding them loosely down a path, right? So we're kind of taking a squiggly line from point A to point B and, on through the rest of the show. So for instance, like say, I don't know, I'm making something up off the top of my head. Like say I'm guessing someone's birthday. We don't all have the same birthdays, but I am going to guess someone's birthday in that moment. You know what I mean? So yeah. There are some scripted jokes and then there's ad lib jokes, but that again, that comes with doing a lot of shows is that I'm confident enough in my material, my script, the show that I do and the framework, like the skeleton of it, that when I do get someone who's a class clown on stage and they want to make their coworkers laugh, or I get someone who's shy, I can banter with them accordingly. I can meet them in the middle to make them comfortable on stage or let them have some of the spotlight if I want and not be worried that I'm going to get lost in my show or deviate too far from my script and not be able to get back. So those are the good things that come from doing a lot of shows. And those are the things that I think I enjoy most because it keeps it fresh. I'm not doing Shakespeare. I'm not doing a play that every line is the same and the audience passively watches it. They have to participate to make the show. So it does make it unique and fresh, even though it's, I'm hitting the mark, so to speak, every 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever.
Yep. Hey, everybody. This is your paranormal podcast pal, Bob Heskey. Every night I like to listen to videos on YouTube. But lately, with COVID, civil unrest, market volatility, politics, conspiracy theories, I just want to tune out. That's why I like Audible. What's Audible, you say? Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audio books, including some great horror and paranormal titles like A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, If It Bleeds by Stephen King, and The Boatman's Daughter by Andy Davidson.
This place is cursed.
Each month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, access to daily news digests if you actually want to hear the news, as well as guided meditation programs. Hey, we all need a little Zen now and again. And Audible is oh so easy. You can download titles and listen offline, anytime, anywhere, on any device. The app is free and can be installed in your smartphone or tablet. You can even listen across devices without losing your spot. How cool is that? If you can't decide what to listen to, no problem. You can keep your credits for up to a year and binge on your favorite series later on. So, here's the rub. The Afraid of Nothing podcast is stoked to partner with the audio bookworms at Audible to offer you a free 30-day trial membership. Just follow the link in the show notes, audibletrial.com/AON podcast.
Puedes repetir eso, por favor.
That's audibletrial.com/AON, all caps, podcast, lowercase. Full disclosure, I get a commission for everyone who signs up using that URL. But you get to try it for 30 days without a commitment. Using our custom URL doesn't cost you a penny and helps out the show if you do sign up. Nothing scary about that. So escape reality and pick up a book, an audiobook, and listen to what's out there. Go to audibletrial.com/AON podcast after listening to the show. Now, you mentioned magic, okay? What you do is magic. I mean, that's one of those kind of broad terms. Everybody may have a different definition of it. Could you explain in your mind what magic is and what type of magic have you not mastered or explored that you would like to pursue at some point?
Oh, interesting. So the magic I'm referring to is theatrical magic, is the performance of magical tricks or effects or illusions, whatever you want to call it. So there's a long storied history of magicians, performers, entertainers who create astounding feats for audiences. And there was a heyday, 100 years ago or what now that it was one of the biggest draws theatrically, because the things that were happening on stage, sawing a lady in half or floating someone in the air or something, were so unusual and phenomenal and hadn't been seen. And now you can see them all over YouTube. So it's kind of diluted now, but those were huge back then. And that was so popular. So that's the kind of stuff I saw when I was very young, over and over on TV or at the county fair or the local theater, like I mentioned, that kind of pushed me into this art field, I guess, and got me kind of hooked on it. As far as, I'm really drawn to the psychological kinds of things. I'm kind of in a push lately to expand a little bit more from maybe off of mind reading into my main passion and my main love, I guess, is mystery, is the thought that we are at such a weird time in society right now where we kind of have all the answers. We have supercomputer in our pocket at all times. You can Google anything you want. And it's taken a lot of the joy out of it for me. And so I think there's a big push in my art and in my field and community of people who are like, I'm going to show them the most amazing thing they've ever seen, and I think that's a worthy pursuit, and more power to those people. But to me, the most amazing thing I've ever seen is not a card, even if it gets stuck to a ceiling 40 feet up. It's like it's Niagara Falls from the Canadian side, or it's the Grand Canyon, or it's the ocean for the first time, or a shooting star or whatever. There's so many more amazing things that just blow my mind in a way that a magic trick can't. But I think something that magicians still have, mind readers still have, is the thought of mystery. It's a thought that you can give an audience if you do it right, if everything connects, if the audience is good, you have a good night and you do a good show. You can give them this feeling of not knowing. You can give this feeling of complete and total mystery where they can't Google it. They can't ask anyone. They have no answer. So on the drive home, 3 a.m, 2 weeks later, they're just going to have to tell themselves like, hey, I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to be okay not knowing. And not knowing to me is a really powerful feeling and emotion and decision to make in 2020, when we can know pretty much anything we want if you look it up or have a computer or whatever in front of you. So that is kind of my big push now. And I'm trying to see, can I tell a personal story? Can I share a mystery on stage that isn't necessarily mind reading, but is still mysterious in nature? Are there other ways I can push this? So the pandemic has led me to think that maybe I have other arenas to pursue, and that I could open it up in a way where my push is just mysterious ideas and thoughts that I'm sharing with people. And part of that includes mentalism, but also some of it includes just mystery in general and my love of that. So I'm not exactly clear what that means. You're catching me in the middle of trying to figure that out, but that's where I see myself headed, because I'm just so obsessed with the thought of just not knowing and this willingness to just be fine in that area between an answer and a question, and just kind of settling there in the middle and being okay with that feeling.
It sounds like you're where a lot of people are. I deal with a lot of people in the paranormal, and whether researchers or psychics or mediums or whatnot. But one person his name's Jeff Belanger. He's the guy for, I don't know if you may or may not have watched Ghost Adventures, which Zach Baggins has been on for it's like iconic in that kind of industry on the Travel Channel. So he's done research for every show for the past 15 years that they've done. So now when they weren't filming, he's had to reinvent himself. And he does like this speakeasy where he, gets on and he has a guest and they share a drink and people listen to them have a conversation.
Oh,
and
great.
then he started doing that like 3-4 months ago. And then he started doing virtual library discussions or webinars or whatever, or talks. Sure. Which actually expanded his audience. He used to just go to a library and have that kind of physical audience. Now it's online and more people beyond, it's sponsored by that library, but people beyond that area in that room get to watch it.
Right. That's the great thing about the virtual world. I've done 120 virtual shows since March or something. It's been absolutely insane. And I had no idea 6 months ago what Zoom was, or that I could even do a virtual show, so it's a whole new world. But I find that for years, people have said, like, let me know when you're coming through town. Let me know when you are in our city. We want to come see you. And now suddenly I've sent out my mailing list several times. Hey, I'm doing a ticketed show virtually, 20 tickets available. And they go like crazy because all these people who have been dying for me to come to their city, suddenly I'm coming through, I'm in their home on their device and they can watch. So it's a cool format, and anti-technology as I am, sometimes I try to like stay off my phone and do all those things. It is a real gift to be able to connect with people in a positive way. I think that's different, in an interactive way. Like those talks sound very interactive, where they're actively sharing ideas, where people are tuning in for information. That's what I try to do in my show, is like make it participatory, where people are helping on screen. So they're not just doing the usual like Netflix or YouTube thing where they're just passively watching something. So yeah, I've grown to really enjoy and appreciate the virtual world. And it sounds like, that guy's crushing it too.
Yeah, there's a couple of different people. And it's funny. Another thing in the paranormal was people used to like to go ghost hunting or go to paranormal conventions. And what they started doing recently, there's this on the web, Dark Zone TV. So It started off about a couple months ago. They had a 7-day streaming session at the Conjuring House. I'm not sure, again, how much you follow horror or anything, but it's the whole Annabelle series. And
I know what that is.
Ed and
Okay,
Lorraine, Warren. Yep. So the Conjuring House, which I've actually been to. It's not far from where I live. So for 7 days, they did streaming events where they had people live there, but they also had talent phone in or virtually be in and provide commentary or whatnot. And then most recently, they did a 4-day streaming at the Lizzie Borden House in Fall River.
Cool.
So everything is kind of reinventing itself in this new virtual world.
I like it because there's a great TED Talk by an artist named Phil Hansen, who was like a really detailed painter, I think, or maybe pen and ink artist or something. And he developed a shake. Yep. He was in an accident or something and developed a shake. And he thought his life was done as far as art goes, because that ruined everything. But then he starts to embrace the shake, I think is the term he uses, and find other ways to do it. So he would like karate chop the canvas with his hands, because he could control his hand that way. He did an entire painting with karate chops. And then once he did that, he expanded into other things. And I've been thinking of that, since March now, because what the pandemic has done is brilliantly limited people and forced us all to get creative again. Because, for years I've just been going around doing this show out of a bag and settling for what I had, and I'll work on this new thing later, and I'd put it off for 3 months or whatever. But suddenly I'm in this new world, and it's like, well, I can't just do the show I do on stage and broadcast it. I had to come up with a brand new show, because what you do on Zoom or whatever you're doing is different from what I would do live, when I can hand people things and do things. And so being boxed in, having those limitations, back up against the wall. What is this saying? The artist, when cornered, emerges. That's been incredible for me. And I honestly think, in all honesty, I think the show I'm doing on Zoom might be my favorite show I've ever done. Might be maybe my best show I've ever done. And it's on Zoom, which is wild. But I just feel like I don't have to worry about travel and the hotel. I don't have to book plane tickets. I just come in the room here and turn on the camera and go. Everything's set up. It's almost having like a Vegas residency or something, where my props are on stage ready to go. It's insane. So yeah, I like the limitations of this, and it almost makes me, it almost shows the importance, and it makes you wonder about self-imposed limitations outside of this. Like if you go back to normal times, about like, okay, what are my limitations here? I can only travel with one bag. I don't want to check a bag. All right, what's the best show I can do? Or use stagehands and whatever. That's a limitation. Or I only read minds. So how do I do a 60-minute show with that or whatever, So that level of creativity has really lit my fire since March. And I like hearing those stories, because it's fascinating what other artists are doing to not just do their thing on Zoom, but to literally embrace Zoom as a whole new medium and way of presenting talks and shows and entertainment. And yeah, we're so new in it that it's still so exciting. And I've been tuning in for a bunch of friend shows and things, and I'm just constantly inspired by that.
Yeah, it's even on like the Travel Channel, which should be called the Paranormal Channel, because that's all they have on it. But all their programming has been is people sending in videos of stuff, could be like a decade ago, of captured on tape. And then they just have people like me, which I'm not on the show, but I'd like to be eventually, comment on it, So it's, here's some footage that Mark Toland caught.
Fun.
Bob's saying.
So it's that
does look like Bigfoot, but yeah, see,
it's like Masterpiece Theater for found footage or something.
But they're being serious. They're not being like sarcastic.
No,
like
of course. but it's experts in a different way commentating to videos that are sent in.
Yeah.
Cool.
So when you can't go out, you ask for videos and then you share those, and it's kind of like reality TV with some voiceover by some podcasters and stuff. So I want to ask you, because you mentioned the Zoom thing you're doing. What are some of the things that you're doing for corporations to entertain them? Because there's been a ton of webinars that now companies do, because they push webinars left and right. And then they have these like full day kind of multi-day tracks now, and they throw in things like a magician or how to cook how to mix a drink, or how to cook a meal or whatever. So what are some of the things that you're doing for businesses in this kind of new post-COVID reality?
Yeah, for years I've been doing corporate entertainment really is my main source of income. So those are my clients, and I'm used to traveling around and doing conferences and conventions and their employee banquets and things. But now, since everything's moved online, they're having happy hours and employee recognition things and their monthly meetings or whatever. And so I am getting booked to come in and entertain for those. And I'll do anywhere from, I think I've done as short as maybe 10 or 15 minutes all the way up to an hour. And so it is essentially a mind reading show that I have designed for Zoom. It's mostly on Zoom to be as engaging and interactive as possible. So I'm trying to involve as many people during the show as I can. I'm trying to do the most amazing stuff I can. I think it's really interesting because the mind reading I usually do, the theatrical stuff in a comedy club or one of those banquets or something where I'm in person, it's good. And I think I do good shows and I get good reviews and things. But they're seeing me outside of territory that they're used to. They don't live at that comedy club. They don't frequent that banquet hall often. So it's not quite as connecting. If you go see a magician in a theater now, it's amazing. But, you're like, okay, is there a trap door there? Are there wires? Or there's a mirror and smoke? People have all these crazy theories because they understand it's happening on their turf. Or even if you see David Blaine on TV, you're like, yeah, but it's on camera. Can he do that if I was there, right? But I think there is something very alarming, something very startling about doing a show on Zoom, about telling someone like, hey, go and grab a pencil and paper, write this down, and then hold it up and let's see. And they literally are in their house using their objects, whatever they have on their desk or stuff from around the home. And I'm reading their mind there. And it's intrusive and mind-blowing and wildly entertaining because the reactions are so real. They're wearing what they've worn all day. They didn't come to the theater. They don't have pants on. They're on Zoom. I don't know. They're freaking out, right? And it's so fun because they are not out of their usual environment. They are in their usual environment. And then I get to just kind of like almost reach through the screen as best I can and amaze them like that. So all these corporate people are really into it, I've found. And then I'm doing college shows as well, and they're very into it too. But what it is a show designed to be on Zoom, be as amazing and entertaining as possible. And I do a lot of customization for corporate clients too. That's part of it is I'll write like a script for them or a presentation for the live show. And I've done some of that through Zoom as well, where I can tie in their logo or their hashtag or whatever and use that to be part of the show, which is super compelling as well. So those are all things I'm still exploring in this format that I've been doing it for years, over a decade full time on stage and at live events, and now 5 months in the online world. So still exploring and learning, but yeah, it's all it is. It's just about connection. And hopefully it's almost like grabbing people by the shoulders and being like, wake up, I want to show you something amazing, and snap them out of their routine. So yeah, I quite enjoy that. I quite enjoy seeing a banker or an attorney or a marketer freak out on camera in a way they're not used to doing because they've seen something amazing after being in a meeting all day long.
That's awesome. Let's throw out a plug. If someone was looking to invite you to their all hands meeting, to do 15 minutes or a half an hour, or to their sales roundtable or something, how do they connect with you?
Oh, sure. I'm marktoland.com. So MarkToland.com. Everything happens through there. I'm almost busier than I've ever been right now because of the virtual world, how easy it is to, people don't have to fly me places and do things, but also I can double or triple up. I've had many 3 and 4 show nights because of virtual stuff. So yeah, I've grown to enjoy it very much. And it's a weird thing that people hear about and they're like, well, maybe we'll try it. And then once they do, I mean, it's just like repeat booking because it's so different from here's another PowerPoint or we're all just going to watch another Netflix movie tonight or whatever. That interaction, I think what I do was really built for this time because people want connection more than anything. And so this is seeing them through the screen, really seeing and listening and interacting and engaging in a way that Hulu, Netflix, all that stuff just can't.
Your website is a good-looking website. I mean, I think very well set up. And if I recall, I think it does have some videos where people could get a flavor for. I mean, there's certainly testimonials about you on it that are very impressive, but I think there are some videos on there where they can get a flavor of you in action too, as well. Correct?
Oh yeah. There's a whole, there's many clips from the virtual stuff as well as the live stuff. Some of my TV appearances and whatnot. Soon to be this podcast episode on there.
Yeah, awesome.
And
and actually, I do put these out pretty quick, by the way. We talked offline, and look, you have a degree of like reading people, and there's a certain degree of skepticism, probably well-founded in paranormal and the supernatural, because there is quite a bit of fraud and misleading going on in the business, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of reminds me of like Houdini, right? Because Harry Houdini, back like, his time was like right after World War I and the Spanish flu. So there's like 36 million people died, right, around that time.
Right.
And then spiritualism was really having a renaissance,
Right.
and the Ouija board and all that stuff. And there's this famous story about Harry Houdini going to Boston and debunking this woman named Mina Crendon or something like that, called Marjorie or whatever. And like apparently Scientific American, this whole panel was ready to hand her a check, and he felt he debunked her. He thought she was very clever.
Right.
And then they had this whole type of internal debate where they weren't sure. They wanted to publicly debunk her. And this kind of spirit she apparently talked to, called Howard or whatever he's called, said that Houdini was going to die before Halloween. And actually he died on Halloween, I think, if I recall correctly. He was punched in the stomach and he did whatever. So he called her out, but at the end they kind of had the last laugh, if you call that a last laugh. So, but anyways, you kind of as well have had, I mean, you had this on one of your TEDx talks called Honest Lies. You talked about in an airport where you met a woman who claimed to be a psychic and how you debunked that. So just share us some of your experiences and some of your skepticism dealing with people who call themselves psychics and how you debunk that.
Doing what I do, you meet people kind of from the spectrum of doing it, right? Hobbyists all the way up to people who say they have psychic gifts or anything in between. Knowing what I know about it and having spent nearly almost 30 years now working and learning and researching and understanding and performing and really getting into it, you're kind of in a quandary, because the goal of what you do is to leave people with no answers and leave people with no explanation. And for some reason, when people see David Copperfield fly, it's like, wow, that was absolutely amazing. But I don't think anyone leaves there thinking that Copperfield's going to fly home to his mansion after the show, Whereas I don't know if this is like the last frontier of magic that has this, but I think when you do mentalism, when you read minds, there is a decently sized section of the audience who really buys into it or thinks you can do that or believes it part way or something. So it'd be very easy as a performer in the mystery arts who does mind reading like I do to double down, to take ownership of those powers, to play a role, right? And I think my personal opinion is people like John Edward, people like Long Island Medium, people like that, that's what they're doing. They have found a skill that they're good at, and they have chosen to frame it as supernatural powers instead of tricks like I have, although I believe they're doing tricks. And I think that is immoral. I think that is abhorrent. I think that is kind of repulsive and gross. There's a million stories out there. New York Times recently had a great article about a psychic that swindled someone out of over $100,000 or something. And this poor person just needed information about a will that a relative who passed had left, and they couldn't find it. And this person just dangled the carrot and led them on and took all their money and then closed their shop and left, and completely fraudulent. Now, whether or not there are real psychics out there, I mean, I would love to meet a real psychic. I'd be out of a job, but if there was, surely they'd be winning the lottery, or it'd be scientifically proven at this point or something. It hasn't been. So I don't know if that exists. I have yet in my personal experience to meet one, and I've probably spoken with 3 or 4 dozens. This one in the airport was one of many examples. And essentially it was a lady I met in a very early, walk through an airport on the way to an event. And she told me she was clairvoyant. She asked me what I did in passing. She stopped me, and she was very charming and friendly, but she kind of stopped me and made conversation. And I'm from the Midwest, so I'm very friendly. So we're chatting, and she lets on that she's clairvoyant, and then she can tell I don't believe. So she starts to say all these things about me. And for a split second, I was kind of blown away, because she knew my birthday and she knew my wife's name and some of these things. And then I was able to pull myself out of that exchange and think about it and realize that I had just rented a car, and I had to give my birthday to the counter there. They had asked for my birthday, I was younger at the time, so you have to be a certain age to rent a car, right? So I had to give my birthday. And then I was also talking to my wife on the phone in line as I was renting a car, and said her name. And so this lady basically eavesdropped and regurgitated it like one of those 80s evangelical leaders who have an earpiece in, Peter Popoff or something, had basically done the same thing and tried to convince me she was real. And I remember thinking in that moment, like it's, I don't want to say it's a dangerous thing. I don't think what I'm doing is necessarily dangerous, but I do think you want to be careful and you want to be able to sleep at night knowing you're honest. So yeah, I'm lying on stage, but I'm also trying to be honest with my audience about that. And I think it's much better of me to say like, look, I'm not real, but it feels real. That's the mystery. Than to say like, look, the answer is I'm supernatural. I was gifted with these abilities when lightning hit me and I was 7 years old or whatever. Right. So that's all kind of my stance. And yes, it is very Houdini. There's a great video on YouTube that I would point listeners to. It's Orson Welles. He's a big hero of mine. And he's talking about how he was on the road. And I believe, a weird coincidence here, he was also in Kansas City, just like I was at the airport with that woman. I think he was in Kansas City doing a show, and he decided to set up a fortune telling shop or something. And he set up as a swami and dressed up in fortune teller garb and readings for $0.25 or whatever the ridiculously low price it was at that time. And people came in for readings and throughout the day, and he was just doing cold reading, which is essentially making kind of educated guesses about people. And, there's nothing psychic to it, but the more you do it, the more you start to amaze yourself. And he said at the end of the day, a lady walked in and he knew so much about her just from doing it so much that he had to shut it down because he realized he was starting to believe in it himself and not know where these things were coming from. And so from an honest point of view, he had to shut it down and stop there because it was getting out of hand. And so there's this great talk about him doing cold reading and how people can almost convince themselves that they're real over time if they aren't careful.
No, that's fair. And I think you and I will have somewhat different because I agree totally that a lot of people do this for the wrong reasons and they are charlatans. I also think, particularly when they ask for more money and they know you're desperate, a lot of times people want to believe, so they fall into it. I do think there's a small sliver out there that kind of a little bit more legit, but that's fine. Well, I know you've yet probably to meet them.
I would love to meet some, I consider myself an atheist, but that doesn't mean I don't want there to be a God. I think that sounds amazing, but I just haven't seen any evidence, right? I would love to meet a psychic. Let's put that in inverted commas, I guess. But I would love to meet someone claiming psychic abilities who was actually psychic. I mean, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing, right? I don't think anyone doesn't want that, but I'm a little I'm very skeptical of most things. And so I think, I just err on the side of like, please somebody show me so I can believe that and something else and something else. But as of yet, I have yet to meet anyone like that.
What about your wife? Does she believe in that, or is she kind of skeptical too?
My wife is probably even more skeptical than I am. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Yeah. It's funny. Before I made the documentary, I was kind of left searching because my mom's death left me kind of cold. There was no spirit rising out of her. There's no kind of, she died of dementia and didn't even know me the last couple of years at the end. So I was then hence I made this movie and I thought I'd look through other people's lenses. And I had always considered myself having tunnel vision. And there were some strange things that happened to me during the making of it and afterwards that I couldn't, it wasn't a psychic reading. It was like an EVP, like something coming on the radio in my car after I've been to a couple haunted places, theoretically, some voices that literally came out. Is this freaky? And then I had like an event. I'm always cautious, Mark, because I repeat some of these stories. This is my 30th episode, and my brother has listened to every one, and he tells me, you already said that in episode XYZ, but there was one case where also after I'd been to a lot of these haunted places, I would have these like negative thoughts and like I never thought and so sometimes I talk about negative attachments and things. So anyways, I'll make it really quick, but I literally was in bed and I had always at that point, I had started my day with positive affirmation. I literally was in bed. I'm divorced now, but facing my wife. And I swear to God, it was about midnight, a little bit right around there. I felt almost my rib cage open and like something leap out of me. Not like it was like a punch to the stomach, but the other way. And I had no explanation for it. I thought like my soul left me or what the hell happened, and I just kind of let it pass. I looked at my wife when it happened. It like her eyes kind of flittered really weird and kept an eye on her, make sure like nothing went in her that she would like kill me or something. But it was just a really weird experience I'd never had. So some people have seen ghosts that I've talked to. Some people have seen shadows or whatever. The EVPs and that happened to me, that physically feeling something leave, and I wasn't like sleeping, I was awake. It was like I feeling like something, my rib cage opening and the breath of something leaving me. I had no explanation for it. So that's kind of been my experience. There are things, maybe there's an explanation for it, but there's some things that happen that are kind of hard to explain sometimes.
No, that is interesting. I mean, there very well could be an explanation, or maybe there is no explanation. I kind of think that's kind of the joy of skepticism, perhaps, is that I much prefer, like, people, like, speaking just strictly from my show and my the only thing that I present to the public, which is my show, is that I want people to think like, wow, look, if this guy can do all these things and says he's not real, who else out there is doing similar things but not being quite as honest, right? And and I think that's just a window of opening up and being like, okay, maybe there are other things that I can't explain yet, but that doesn't mean they don't have an explanation, right? So it's like the card stuck up high on the ceiling, the overhang, in a way, because if my friends told you that story, they're not going to recall it as vividly as I do because I did it. They're going to say I floated up there and stuck it to the ceiling, or what, they're going to build it up. It's like a fishing story, right? Yeah. And I wonder many times, and I 100% am not denying what you said. I believe 100% that that's what you experienced. But I wonder many times with people recounting stories, and I've heard them do it with my show and other things, what's been changed and contorted and twisted over time. And it's one of those things that it's really hard anecdotally to know anything about something as much as documenting or being there to experience yourself. So I'm fascinated by your story. I don't have any explanation for that, but remain skeptical. How about that?
No, that's fair. Remember the guy I told you about? If you ever look up Ghost Adventures, it's been on like 15 years.
I wrote it down.
He's done research for every show, Jeff Belanger.
Mm-hmm.
In 15 years, he's only had a ghost, and beyond that, before that he was doing it, he's had 3 or 4 personal ghost experiences, like 2 really kind of vivid. That's like having 1 hit in 15 baseball seasons, or whatever. It's like it doesn't happen very often.
What I want is his course on how to get a show on the air and keep it on after that track record. That's phenomenal that he retains an audience.
Well, that's his personal.
In many ways, I think searching for Bigfoot or any of those UFOs or whatever, the mystery of that is what keeps those going, right? People love this mystery of like, is there a Bigfoot? Did I hear him, or was that a deer? Was that a UFO or a meteor? Like, the mystery of it is almost the intrigue. Because if we got a crystal clear picture of Bigfoot and it was done, what would those people have to live for anymore? It's almost like it's the chase more than anything. So I think that there's definitely an appetite for that kind of mystery. Those people who are, I mean, in many ways they're like me, which they like that mystery. I'm just maybe a little further behind in the belief of something like that, but I am intrigued by that level of curiosity and that constant search for pursuing more and more answers and information.
Yeah, well, like even the ocean, 95% of the ocean, we don't know what the hell it is, right? Or the universe, So it's like there's a lot of mysteries out there we're not even aware of. When you don't know it, it's like supernatural or whatever until you have an explanation that it's science. Who knows?
Right.
But what's your thought about UFOs or things like that?
Well, haven't there been all those things recently about like sightings and things that were like literally documented of like they weren't sure what they were? I don't know what they are other than what came out. I forget the names of all those people.
It was the Navy. There was this thing called these TikTok videos or something that was recently, like about a year ago, where finally the government is starting to reveal some of these tapes.
Right. They were finally declassified or something where we could see them, and it's very strange, like accounts of stuff. There's no doubt in my mind, if the universe is a massive, massive place, there's got to be something else out there, right? Statistically, there's something else out there. Now, I don't know if aliens in the form of what ET or whatever exists like that in our kind of fashion, or alien abductions have actually occurred or something. There's very differing accounts. And I think especially with like cell phone, like the ubiquitous nature of a camera in everyone's pocket, by now we'd have something like that wasn't just something made up. But I am fascinated by that. And obviously there have been, like, the very definition of UFO, unidentified flying objects. There's been that. And then there's been like, what was that recently? The guy in a jetpack over LAX, right? There's just weird stuff that happens that people see, right? So I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I am fascinated by conspiracy theories. I think there is something, and we're in that time right now. You can go on YouTube or any newspaper and read about the tiny, like, flat earth all the way up to the biggest conspiracy theories. And these people that believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that whatever their theory or world is true, and there's a cover up, that they have all the information or have done the research or whatever, and they may well be right. But I'm just interested in what is it that's so appealing to that about people. And I think it's like people like to do research. They like to feel part of a community. They like to, there's a level of intrigue to these things that like exist under like in the undercurrent, right, of things that are like, that feel hidden or covered up or top secret or something. So I don't know. It's a fascinating world. I did grow up religious, but I can't think of anyone who had any ghost story or encounter or UFO or anything like that.
We have to get you to Massachusetts, man, because there's a ton of stuff out here.
I've been to like Salem and done all the tours and stuff, and been I wanted to seek that out, and I'm a big fan of like haunted houses. both the ones in like October for Halloween and then just in general, like the stories of hauntings and things like that. I'm forever fascinated by that.
I think at the end of the day, just like reality and consciousness, it's kind of how we perceive it and what we perceive to be real.
Sure.
And different people perceive things differently. So, but it is always that mystery, I think, that we're all looking for. So I just want to ask, your website says, in closing, get to know Mark. He knows you already. So what should we know about you that is outside the norm or that we probably wouldn't know? Is there anything any geeky thing you do outside of what you do as mind reading, or what's kind of cool about you? A little tidbit be good to know about you.
Sure. Well, I am literally on a quest for a more mysterious life, I would say. So in the last several years, I've made a big push in like perhaps a more analog direction, try to swing the pendulum back away from the tech heavy life that we've all been living and I was falling into. So part of that, I deleted all my social media, went completely off that. I'm only on YouTube now.
Good for you.
Yeah, no, it's honestly, I highly recommend it to anyone. It's a life-changing thing.
By the way, did you check out Netflix? Did you read The Social Dilemma? I mean, did you see
we watched that? We watched that a few nights ago. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just watched it last night.
Yeah, that's stuff so fascinates me. And again, it's another psychological thing, just like the conspiracy theories. It's another psychological thing where
unnerving.
It's something in our brains that's firing, or there's some, what were they calling it? Like the psychological influence built into those platforms and things. So yeah, another thing that fascinates me, I just knew I tried all the gambits. So like the turn your brightness down or set timers or leave your phone in the other room. I tried all that and I would just inevitably end up back on it. So the only way for me to break it was just to delete all of it. As I did it, I was like, this is an awful decision. I am an entertainer. I need this. Everyone says I need it. If you go to anywhere and they're like, how to promote yourself, the first thing is social media. But honestly, I've had more inquiries, I've had more shows, I've had more success and better sleep, less anxiety. All those things that you would imagine would come out of that have happened. That's been good. And so as a result of that push into more mysterious life, I kind of surround myself with, I'm really into like analog objects. So I've got 3 typewriters within inside of me here. I've got a Royal, an Olivetti, and an Underwood. I really like filmmaking. So I've got a lot of new cameras. I like to make videos, which I still feel like is kind of an analog thing. My camera is not connected to the internet, so I can go out and make a video, even though it's a digital camera. But I also have, and the newest addition to this collection is a Super 8 camera, which I absolutely adore. So I love taking that. You get very weird looks in the park when you're shooting Super 8, but there is a very mysterious quality to Super 8 that I love, which is I can't flip out the screen and redo it. I just have to trust that it's good. It's much like a disposable camera of 15 years ago or something. And I love that ephemeral quality that it brings, and the fact that you just send the film off and you hope for the best. And there's something magical about that. So that is what I'm on a quest for, is to capture those things in my life, find more of that.
Sounds like you should do a documentary yourself about maybe that quest, because I just did a documentary, Afraid of Nothing.
Right. It's a good idea. The pandemic has me thinking that my wife and I have lived in Chicago about a decade now, and we really have wondered, like, why are we here right now? Nothing's open. We're still paying top price, property tax and parking and all the stuff that comes with city. The reason you move to the city, if you're like in the world we're in, my wife is also a self-employed artist. If you're in that world, you either move to the city for the amenities of the city, the food and the culture and access and airports and all that, or the opportunity, or maybe both. And so there's people who've grown up here, lived here their whole life, or maybe they have like a desk job downtown, and that's a different reason to move to the city. But as far as my world and show business, I really have to wonder why I'm here. I'm not performing at any theater, so there goes the opportunity, and nothing's open. It's not fun to go to a restaurant and wear a mask. It's not, I'm not going to buy a timed entry ticket to the museum. There's no spontaneity or fun. Everywhere is just either super crowded, like because they've shut down a lot of the parks, so everyone just goes to the ones that are open, or everything's very dead. And so, I'm wondering why. I think in that ever continuing quest for mystery, I think we're headed off grid, honestly. If we have this conversation in 2 years, it might be from the mountains, from the woods or something. I feel like I either want to be in the middle of everything or the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people. I mean, I just talked to a futurist recently, and he talked about one of the trends he saw was the death of the cities, and people are moving out of New York, and they're moving out of the offices for the exact same reasons you mentioned. So there's going to be a huge migration and transformation of where geographically where people live.
Yeah,
So
I believe it.
cool. Hey, we're going to wrap it up, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. I would like to close by one more plug about any upcoming shows or where people could check you out, or
Sure.
your website again, or your blog. So just tell us where we can find out anything and everything about Mark Toland.
Yeah, so I write a daily blog on my website, which is marktoland.com. It's kind of a behind the scenes look at life as a performer, sprinkled in with some anecdotes about mystery and kind of just my general love of arts and creativity. So people that read it seem to enjoy it. I have pretty, a moderately sized dedicated readership there and enjoy doing that. It all happens on my website because I don't have social media, but I have a mailing list that people can join to find out about shows. And right now I'm sending every month or every other month, depending on the schedule, I'm sending out only to the readers of that mailing list a ticketed night of virtual mind reading. So if people are looking for fun stuff to do at home and their company's not bringing me to their company show, there's another way they can do it, but it's only on my mailing list just to differentiate and give those people it's kind of just thanking those people for their support over the years. So that's where people can stay up on things. And
what was the blog? What was the website for the blog again?
Oh yeah, it's my site. It's marktoland.com. It's there's a tab called Thoughts, and I post I try to post every day and just keep that going because I enjoy writing and yet another analog activity and output for my creativity and just these constant thoughts I'm having about things.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to connecting you with maybe some people in the future and maybe change your mind a little bit about some things or hopefully help you find the mystery that you seek to find.
I am open-minded and would love nothing more. Hey, I really appreciate you having me. Can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode. And the world will know how swell you are.